and the former BBC's North America editor, who knows all too well what Trump thinks of his previous employer. Jon, welcome to Uncensored.
Thank you, Piers. Good to be with you.
So, look, no one knows better than you, I guess, about the complexities of working for the BBC with Donald Trump as president. You had to do that for a number of years. First of all, my kind of overview about this is that the BBC here dropped a massive own goal. Right? They basically invited exactly what's come. They said, in the way that they spliced up, or the independent film company October Films appear to have spliced up the Trump speech in a way that was misleading. They're basically saying to Trump, come and get us. I mean, am I overstretching things when I say that?
One of the world's most respected broadcasters calls its own mistake moronic. You know something serious has happened when the BCC's latest controversy isn't about Trump, it's about what happens when institutions lose the trust they've built for generations.
No, I think it was stupid. I think it was moronic. I think it was the sort of error that someone wouldn't even make having just left journalism college. You cannot misrepresent what people say. But is it a misrepresentation, or did Donald Trump? I mean, look, let's be honest. Donald Trump had tweeted in December, there's going to be a big protest in DC. Come along, it's going to be wild. And the January the 6th Commission said that incited the riots that took place. A number of the people who appeared in court said they were doing it because Donald Trump that's what they thought he wanted them to do. Was the BBC wrong to splice together two bits that overcooked what Donald Trump said? Absolutely they were. It was foolish, and I cannot for the life of me fathom why the BBC didn't just, as soon as this was pointed out to them, say, whoa, sorry, that was a terrible thing to have done. We shouldn't have done it. And I'm still scratching my head over why the corporation has dragged its feet for over a week since this was in the news.
Tom Mangold, who worked at Panorama for 26 years as an investigative journalist, he said this to Sky News yesterday.
I can't understand how it happened. I mean, changing somebody's speech by deliberately misediting is the worst crime imaginable in BBC News. You just don't do it. This film was made by an independent company called October Films, but the BBC carries total responsibility for what was in the film and the way in which it was edited.
I mean, you're not the only one, Jon, scratching your head. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, you talk about scratching your head. It's kind of inexplicable that nobody at Panorama, which, for American viewers, Panorama is the flagship news show, really, at the BBC. It's renowned globally for not doing the kind of thing that's happened here. What do you think? I mean, the bizarre thing to me is it's led to the downfall of Tim Davie and Deborah Turner.
That's the moment where the real story begins. Leadership fallouts. Two top execs step down, but the people who made the edit stay. That's how institutions protect the logo instead of the lesson.
So two of the very top executives at the BBC have resigned over this. But neither of them, unless you correct me, I don't think either of them would have been directly involved in what's happened here. What I haven't seen is any admission of culpability by October Films, nor have I seen anybody at Panorama hold their hand up and say, actually, we're the ones who should be resigning here. I just can't quite get my head round who's falling on the block and who isn't.
Yeah, look, so when I was in Washington for all through the Trump's first term, there were watchwords for our reporting, which was be careful, be very careful. But once you've been very careful and you've got all your facts assembled, be bold. That's what journalism should be like. You don't do things that open you up to criticism in the way that Panorama has. Now, my understanding is that on Tuesday of last week, the BBC News executives had kind of got together and said, Christ, we've got a bit of a mess here. We need to apologise for it. And for whatever reason, and there are some dark, murky reasons, and there are some more kind of benign reasons, but stupid, they decided not to apologise until the chairman of the BBC went before the committee, a parliamentary committee, and issued a statement today, this lunchtime. And you think, well, hang on, if you have got a vacuum like that, Donald Trump, as sure as eggs is eggs, is going to fill it. And by God, he has. And now the DG, the Director General's gone, head of news has gone, and he's threatening to sue the BBC for a cool $1 billion.
What's fascinating here isn't the lawsuit threat, it's the pattern. The media outlet rushes to control the narrative and in the process confirm exactly what the critics accuse them of. That's credibility loop they can't escape.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's been waging a sort of revenge tour war on mainstream media in the United States. He's now turning his turrets on the BBC, and it may be that that pressure was being expressed behind the scenes. He's certainly been very gleeful in, I think, the downfall of these executives. What was interesting to me was this all came about because the Daily Telegraph got a leak of a memo by somebody called Prescott, who had been charged with examining BBC allegations of bias and so on. It wasn't just about this point. Also, he concluded the BBC's coverage of the 2024 election was more critical of Trump than of his opponent, Kamala Harris. He said that he found evidence that the BBC had been one-sided in its coverage of transgender issues, celebrating the trans experience without adequate balance or objectivity. And we just saw this farcical situation, for me, of a presenter called Maxine Croxall, who had rolled her eyes when she was told to read the phrase pregnant people on air, which I think 99% of women in the world would have found very difficult reading, because obviously only women get pregnant. And has now had, because of 20 complaints, a finding against her. So that plays in, I think, to what many people will see as a bias.
When legacy media fumbles like this, it doesn't just hurt their brand, it erodes public confidence across the board. If you're here for calm, honest analysis without the outrage loop, hit subscribe. This is the Unfiltered Take, where we talk about the story behind the story.